I was representing Prime Minister Modi, and the huge respect that everybody has for Prime Minister Modi was evident in the warmth with which they received me. Both Excellency President Joe Biden, the First Lady, and a host of world leaders were very, very keen to know how Prime Minister Modi is, what's happening in India. They all missed him very much. And clearly they all see in India a trusted friend, a leader who can deliver, a leader who's very committed to the well-being of his people, and who cares for the world. So I think it's been a very satisfying engagement, very fruitful in terms of outcomes, and certainly will lay the foundation for even stronger relations with many of our very trusted good friends.
As we speak, Madhya Pradesh is going to the ballot. By the time this goes on air, the ballot would have been cast. So I underline the same thing, because somewhere is this a vote not just on the governance or governance that's been given within, but also the trust without. That means to the world at large. Do you get the sense that sense of trust is perhaps developing, or is it still, is there a deficit?
I think Prime Minister Modi is universally acclaimed as the most loved leader. In fact, Prime Minister Tony Albanese was talking about the Prime Minister in the most flowing terms just before I came in for your interview before the IPEF leaders meeting. And warmly remembering all his interactions with Prime Minister Modi, looking forward to his next visit to India.
Bharat was a guest at the invitation of the United States because they're playing host after 2011 for APEC. But from President Biden's commitment, somewhere it looks like Bharat is going to be a regular feature of APEC going forward. So are we formally joining the APEC? Are we moving in that direction?
Well, I don't think that was a subject of discussion in today's interaction. The focus was on sustainability and climate action. And I must say the respect they gave us, even though we were only an invited country for APEC, was phenomenal. Secretary Kerry, who was moderating the program, the discussions, and who laid the background of the subject before all the leaders spoke, had the kindest words to speak about the contribution of Prime Minister Modi and India. Many leaders on the table spoke exactly the language that India uses in terms of the responsibility of the developed countries towards the developing countries and less developed countries. In fact, President Biden also acknowledged that those who were really not responsible for this problem in the first place are the ones who are most affected by climate change. And I think that's a big statement coming from a world leader, and shows that what Prime Minister Modi has been articulating on so many forums is now being accepted universally.
But on the other dynamic is the IPEF, and there are some significant achievements there. You know, the fifth pillar remains a bone of contention. First pillar, yeah.
Pillar on clean economy and fair economy have been substantially finalized. Legal scrubbing will now be taken up. So we would have done significant outcomes in barely 14 months. September was when we launched last year, the discussions. And I think never before have 14 countries come together with such substantive outcomes in such a short span of time. So one must acknowledge that there is a serious interest amongst partner countries to strengthen our relationship with each other. On the trade pillar, I think more work needs to be done, but we are all committed to working together. India also looks forward at some point to have a sense of what is finally being agreed upon and how the outcomes would impact India, so that we can also take a decision on joining the first.
The other thing is, I heard Secretary Gina Raimondo say that they're going to create a project preparation fund separately to evaluate opportunities, especially India and Vietnam.
I think the sincerity of purpose with which IPEF members have worked was reflected in the decision today to launch a US-India initiative, which is in some sense only the seeds or the beginning of a much larger objective. We all recognize that we need long tenor, low cost funds. We recognize that investors are also looking at signaling from the governments.
Yeah.
And the signaling of the sort that has been done with America and India jointly co-funding this initiative and expecting large amounts of private capital also to ride on it. At some stage, possibly the World Bank also joining in. So this will be like a catalytic moment where we'll be catalyzing larger pools of capital to come in and support clean energy projects in India. My sense is that this is just the beginning and will help make capital available more easily. Of course, we have a long way to go, but it's always the seeds of the future that is laid, which is the important moment in history.
One of the aspects of clean energy is also clean automobile or clean transport. So electric vehicles, there's a lot of talk. There was talk that you're here to bring Tesla to India. There was talk, now there is talk that, they're going to be a separate policy for fully made cars to come into India, tariff duties, etc. How would you want to clear the air?
I think Prime Minister Modi and his government have been very, very focused on encouraging the adoption of electric mobility in India. We had FAME 1 for faster adoption of electric vehicles, then we had FAME 2. And we've been fairly successful in creating the awareness across the country for electric vehicles. We have two of our own companies, Tata's and Mahindra's, doing wonderful work. With the electric vehicles. They are made in India, designed and created through our indigenous technologies and indigenous effort. Number of companies around the world have expressed interest in coming and setting up manufacturing in India. We do believe a large country like India with 1.4 billion people, with the growth of the economy, with growing per capita incomes, with growing prosperity and more people coming into the middle class, and people who are very conscious of their responsibility to the environment, very concerned about high levels of pollution, recognize that electric vehicles will be good for them. Also, one must acknowledge that with greater electric vehicles, we have 2 or 3 other advantages. A, our renewable energy, which is planned to grow to 500 gigawatt, the new target Prime Minister Modi has kept before the nation by 2030. 500 gigawatts is no mean achievement. And we are fast working towards that. I think hydrogen is another area, green hydrogen and green ammonia, where we are making rapid strides. Battery storage is being encouraged in India through advanced cell technology. With all of these efforts, e-mobility becomes a natural outcome, particularly with the ability to have solar power, charge our battery systems, and the batteries then going on to run our electric vehicles. This can be a heady end-to-end mix, which is going to be clean all the way through. You will also recognize that this will help us in reducing our import of crude oil.
Correct.
And imagine an India which is not dependent on crude oil imports, our current account deficits will disappear. And the growth story would be just phenomenal for the country. So I think
You said that
mobility,
double-digit growth in the morning. You were saying?
mobility story holds huge potential. And I personally believe that with greater adoption of electric vehicles in the country and a reduction in our import of crude oil, we would be not only reducing pollution levels and making India a better place to live in, we would also be effectively contributing to the clean world in the future. We'll be leaving behind a good legacy for future generations.
So a separate policy
And a strong national economy, which I think at some point could go up to right up to double-digit growth.
Well, but is there a separate policy for electric vehicles then in the making, which
We already have
creates a level playing
we have
field?
several policies, several incentives given out for auto components, for battery manufacturing. I mentioned the other day that one of the reasons I was keen to visit Tesla was the fact that they already source $1 billion worth of auto components from India. They're planning to double it this year. Now, all of this ecosystem is going to help the e-vehicles to become more competitively priced in India. Will help us become indigenous and increase our value addition in India. And I'm sure at some stage, more and more electric vehicle manufacturers will find it very attractive to come to India.
One of the other aspects is deep tech and semiconductors. You had that meeting with Qualcomm head, and they are increasingly growing their footprint. President Biden has spoken about trying to push semiconductors. Are we ready, Piyush, to actually start a foundry? No, from fab to actual chip, high-end chip manufacturing. It's a long-term thing because nations like Taiwan, China, and all have been doing it for decades. Do we think we'll be able to provide that kind of resources also required for doing something like that?
I think it's a process, and we are well entrenched in the process. I saw resonance in many of my meetings, both in the private sector. I met Micron earlier yesterday. We had meetings with Qualcomm today. Both have significant plans for India, growth plans and investment plans. I do believe the governments across the world are looking for reliable and trusted sources for their semiconductors also. And we are entering into the process where already design is done in a big way in India.
Yeah.
There are many companies who have thousands of people working on designing semiconductors or testing of semiconductors in India. I think this process is going to get wings as the policies around semiconductor incentivization takes place. The spec scheme is now taking off.
Yeah.
More and more Indian engineers will get trained in the semiconductor industry. And all of this portends a good future for the industry.
So is there going to be a government fillip to the capex? Are you going to be?
Yes, the entire Semicon mission talks about significant incentives for people investing in the semiconductor industry. You also have states giving out significant benefits and concessions. All in all, my sense is that in the next few years, we'll gradually move up the cycle and you'll see more downstream and upstream investments so that we have an end-to-end value chain in semiconductors.
Where is the challenge? What is it that they're telling you closed doors when you ask the media to step out? They're raising some concerns.
I think it's not so much concerns as the recognition of the pathway and the understanding that we have to go through that pathway. There will be a process where you start with design, you start with creating the talent and the ecosystem, ensuring the infrastructure is right for that industry. And being a very high precision industry, it's very important that the building blocks are in place. And I think under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, India is creating the building blocks right. That's the message I got from both the government leaders whom I had a chance to talk about this subject and with the private sector who engaged with me.
Is there a concern on political stability, continuity? Are there some trying to put a pause button saying, let's wait till Lok Sabha
Honestly, I didn't
2024?
see that at all. I almost got every world leader's request to be conveyed to Prime Minister Modi, inviting him to their country. And many leaders are looking forward to coming to India in the next calendar 2024 for different meetings, for different bilateral engagements. And when I would say that we would have an election from March to May, the only thing was, okay, then we'll come after May and meet Prime Minister.
One of the things many are saying is initiatives that were mooted by Bharat to try and connect the world at various levels have gotten derailed because of the recent conflict situation. Now, President Biden had said that it's his assimilation, it's his summation that the India-Middle East Economic Corridor riled up some nations. That's why we see what we're seeing between Israel and Hamas. The president of Israel has made a direct quote that there was a need to try and thwart Israel's attempts to try and become the bridge nation. Are all of these conflicts going to hurt us, sir? Because our import bills are also going up with respect to crude because of conflict.
All conflict is bad, and India believes in peaceful coexistence. We condemn terrorism in every form, anywhere in the world. And India has suffered because of terrorism. My home city, Mumbai, has had some of the worst terrorist attacks. Kashmir, until Article 370 was removed in August of 2019, would see terrorist activities on a daily basis. It's only after August 2019 that we've been able to put a lid on terrorist activities, save and except the rear guard action that sometimes you see the terrorists indulging in. I think by and large, the people of the world have recognized that India has been able to thwart terrorism quite well.
On the sidelines, I've had the opportunity of speaking with members of the Quad Investors Forum, of USISPF, of USIBC, also with the CII, so that represents India Inc. to a large extent. You feel personally that there is this whole block which was there that's now been lifted. Do you think do you see a greater interest, or is everybody still saying "Dekhte hain"? Yes.
I didn't see
Make
that
the right
block
noises, but do that.
in the last many years. I don't know which block you're talking about.
No, it's that they won't just bite. It was still there. That the sharks are still not out there on the hunt.
We wouldn't have had record FDIs for so many years in a row if this was the case. I think that's not entirely true. They're looking for large investments. In fact, if at all my experiences of the last few months' engagements tell me something, it's about they're wanting much larger action and much larger opportunities to invest. And I don't think capital will be a problem as India grows its economy. We'll see many more entrepreneurs getting interest from across the world.
So we are very proud of our federal structure, but is somewhere places where there is no double engine ki sarkar. Is that a hindrance to our growth path? Are states working in tandem with the center beyond politics when it comes to economics?
We have had instances where some of the states have reneged on commitments made. Possibly sometimes an earlier government makes a commitment and with a change of guard, new governments have reneged on their commitments, and which does cost India dear. You might have observed that Prime Minister Modi, after he took charge at the central government level, continued to honor every commitment made by a previous government. And he genuinely is a person who is committed to policy stability, predictable regulatory framework, and continuity in government. And in an ideal case scenario, if we can get that same commitment from various political formulations at the state, and they don't flip-flop on regulation and public policy, I think India would get far greater amounts of capital and at more competitive return expectations or costs.
So you do admit that it becomes a deterrent at times.
It certainly adds to uncertainty in some cases, which is why we strongly advocate people to have a government which is sensitive to the people's needs, is really conscious of their responsibilities to the nation, and which is sincere in its desire to provide a better quality of life, a better future for their citizens of the state.
So, as one of the star campaigners of the BJP, that plug had to happen. You're also leading the campaign as far as Rajasthan is concerned. So the political plug has happened there. I'll come back to the politics, to the last two questions. But before that, one of the nations that has been spoken about, or economies in this region, is Vietnam. Some of the other nations which the West is looking to invest in along with Bharat. Those nations have multiple FTAs with more number of nations, which make them attractive trade destinations. Are we looking to sign a few more FTAs, or has geopolitics put the spanner in the works for some?
Vietnam is not working under a democratic framework like India. So it's much easier for them to go forward, and with a smaller population base, their areas of concern when they are doing an FTA are much less. For India, with 1.4 billion people, 140 crore citizens, Indians, and with so much diversity and such a strong manufacturing base, such an important agricultural center, we have a significant amount of caution when we are negotiating FTAs. Despite that, under Prime Minister Modi's charge, you've already seen Mauritius getting executed, Australia, the UAE FTA, the fastest ever done in history. We are in negotiation with several other countries, or block of countries. In fact, in the course of the meetings today, two very senior leaders of Latin American countries discussed it in their own interest to speed up an FTA with India. So I see that across the world, that there's a desire to expand trading relationships with India. And there's a desire to demonstrate to the world the closeness with India.
PM has spoken about this. Across the world, we are seeing this authoritarianism versus democracy, or democracy versus dictatorship, if you were to loosely say that. It's the fight that's happening.
I beg your pardon, it's not a fight.
Or is it tussle?
Existence,
Is it tussle?
but there are different economic
So how
models.
is democracy faring in that sense? Because then, if authoritarian regimes are taking faster decisions, they are able to implement faster. And if so is the world gravitating towards that direction?
Everything comes with a price. The fact that we are a democracy, a vibrant democracy, with the rule of law, very strong judiciary, media, transparency in operations, strong right to information. With this framework, investors feel secure. Investors feel there will be justice in the country. You won't find an instance where a person does well, becomes rich, makes it well in business, one day suddenly disappearing.
Yeah.
Only to appear as a professor in the university. So I think that's the strength of India.
So you're saying that confidence of the world in Bharat is not going to be shaken if the BJP does poorly in the upcoming state election?
Well, we've laid a very strong foundation, and the state elections, I expect that we will do very well. As of now, I've had a chance to study or be a part of Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. And my own sense is all the three states, the BJP will be winning.
That's a big statement. Oh, contrary to what the pollsters are saying, what everybody is expecting, saying BJP may just hang on to one of these states, not all of them, or nowhere
at all. In fact, Chhattisgarh looks to be very good, and very good for the BJP in terms of the support we're getting from the public at every forum. And I think we'll win comfortably in Chhattisgarh. Rajasthan would be absolute victory, very good victory. People have totally lost confidence in Mr. Gehlot. There's been corruption, there's been a lethargy about economic development. All the gains the state had under an earlier BJP regime have dissipated, particularly things like the power sector, which has gone to the boondocks under Mr. Gehlot, the corruption scandals, the misuse of government funds. All of that lends one to clearly see Congress going out of Rajasthan.
So you're saying that the biggest states are all going to be colored in the BJP colors very soon, come December 3rd?
I think so. BJP do extremely well in all three states.
Well, wish you all the best on that. And by the time this interview is on air, ladies and gentlemen, he would be leaving on a jet plane and in the thick of the action in Rajasthan. Piyush Goyalji, always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The gentleman next to me needs no introduction to the people who are watching, because M.R. Rangaswamy, you are the person to go to in terms of consult. Now with Indiaspora, earlier Sandhill, somebody who's written and seen the entire story of Silicon Valley as an entrepreneur, investor. Sir, thank you very, very much for your time, and really appreciate you that in the thick of this APEC summit, you've taken a walk to the Union Square to come and chat with us here at CNN News 18. Thank you very, very much.
Anytime, Anand. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So my first question to you, where is India in the consideration set of the world as it's looking beyond China? How have we been able to sell our story? A candid assessment.
So everybody knows now it's China plus one, right? But there are many, many options when you say China plus one. Is it nearshoring? Is it friendshoring? What is it going to be, right? And in that context, I think India needs to earn its place. It can't just sit back